Of course, in John chapter 11, Lazarus was raised from the dead. Now, that didn't result in the belief of the Pharisees, chief priests, and others, but in their plotting to put Jesus to death, afraid as they were of losing their power and nice standard of living. They were afraid because so many people were beginning to believe in Jesus and to follow after him, taking away from them. Power, prestige, and the niceties of life can blind us from far more important matters. This is what Amos was saying in our first reading. The comforts and luxuries of life have made you complacent, God was saying through him. You're concerned about those things, but not the collapse of Joseph, which was the name for the northern kingdom of God's chosen people. You're concerned about your comfort. You're not concerned at all about the collapse of God's chosen people. When life begins to revolve around ourselves, that's what was meant by devising their own accompaniment. They're the melody, everything else revolves around them. When that happens, what's most important and valuable gets lost. So Jesus told a parable. A parable is a device to help us listeners, including us, to see ourselves in the story. But who sees himself or herself as rich? Do you see yourself as rich, wealthy? This past week at the workshops all the priests attended, the presenter, who's the president of the Augustine Institute, just made an aside about meeting with benefactors and business people who are making $100 million plus a year. And he said they expressed to me almost across the board how surprised they were that $100 million really didn't feel quite like enough. Like something wasn't quite right. It's never enough. Being a trillionaire won't be enough for Elon Musk. Virtually no one sees himself or herself as rich or rich enough. So what about poor? Do you see yourself as being poor? Here are some indicators of being poor in the first century Jerusalem. The poor frequently lived in small single-room houses made of rough stone or mud brick. The space of the house was shared for sleeping, cooking, and storage, even storing livestock. There were no private baths. Water came from communal cisterns or wells. They lived hand to mouth, rarely eating meat or drinking wine, and often experiencing food shortages or famine, possessing only one or two simple garments for their clothing. Do you see yourself as poor? I sure don't see myself in that way. I guess that means that we're in the middle class. So we're off the hook, right? We're not poor, we're not rich. It doesn't matter. We're not involved in this parable. Friends, I think the invitation from Jesus in this parable doesn't have so much to do with rich or poor, but with doing what we can for others, with compassion, with love, or with selfishness, greed, and insensitivity to those in need. Reminds me of this poor family who was here a few weeks ago after Mass, holding a sign after one of the Sunday Masses. I walked out of church and saw them there, and my instinct and responsibility is to speak with them. But it came to me that if I do that, I'm the first one out, it will deprive anyone else of that possibility. It becomes a church thing, not an everyone thing. And so I stepped aside, didn't address them, to allow the opportunity to come to all of you, or all who are attending. How would you have approached that family? How do you approach people like that when you run across them? With the way Jesus structured this parable, I really do think the invitation is to ask, am I doing enough? I mean, to really wrestle with it. I know I certainly wrestle with it and find that I'm often not. I mean, especially in light, not just Lazarus being brought back to life, only later to die again, but in light of the wholly new and unexpected event of Jesus being raised from the dead, never to die again. In the face of that, am I complacent and concerned about selfish things? I often am. It's challenging. And friends, I think it's more challenging than what we might first think. Remember how Jesus approached such things. I mean, he encouraged a way of life that goes beyond the minimum. For example, remember him saying, "You have heard that it was said through Moses that you shall not commit adultery or kill. But I say to you that if you look with lust on another or are angry with another, you effectively have." It's not the bare minimum, right? It's, no, you're capable and called to something more. A bare minimum in the Old Testament was offering your first fruits or your tithe to God. Let's wrestle with what God is calling us to do in light of what he has done for all of us.